Welcome to the podcast. I'm Rosa Coelho, your host, lifestyle entrepreneur, health coach, and speaker. I've gone from being in complete overwhelm, burning the candle at both ends, and watching my health, relationships, and business suffer, to creating a life with more joy, ease, and abundance. If you're ready to let go of the overwhelm, reclaim your health, and push past your comfort zone so that you can unleash your next level of success to create a greater impact, then sit back as we delve into conversations as well as bring on guests to share with you tools, knowledge, and real action steps to get you there. Listen in, because you never know when you may hear something that changes everything. This week I have a super interesting episode for you. I had the very first guest on that was speaking about breath work. And I don't know if you're like me, just think, oh, breath work, and kind of push it to the side. When I think of breath work, I think of yoga. I think of just maybe some simple exercises where you feel a little bit better. But what I learned in this episode with Glenn was fascinating. He not only discussed how breathwork can help us with things like anxiety and being in our head a lot, he also touched on how it can impact our emotions. And one thing that really blew my mind was how it can change the structure of your face and how it impacts your oral health and your dental health. And I just thought, whoa, that's enough for me to take action. So absolutely incredible. There was a lot of new information in this that I didn't know before. And so I love learning new things that can help us to elevate our health and to feel absolutely incredible. And this is definitely an episode that does not disappoint. Listen carefully. If it's a little bit sciencey for you, hang in there, because there's these golden nuggets all the way throughout, right till the end. It's a brilliant episode. I so appreciate Glenn for taking the time to really explain how this all works and how you can improve your health and well-being in such a profound way. So listen in and enjoy this episode. Hi, Glenn. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
How are you?
Very good, very good. We've just been laughing, so that's why we've got grins on our faces.
I know we're always laughing. We're just laughing because before we get into the podcast, I'll just explain how we met. We actually met it was the second gym that I had worked in as a trainer in North London. And Glenn and I were laughing because it was quite an interesting place. It was near the Arsenal Stadium, famous Arsenal football stadium. And yeah, Glenn, you were training at the time. You had either just finished or you were still training James McAvoy, the famous actor. So you were like the cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we worked on that film Wanted that he did. And I think that was 2008 or 9. And then again a little bit on another one. He'd done another action film. But yeah, we just happened to both be in the same gym in North London at the same time. And he lived around the corner from me. And then, it went from there. So yeah, that was quite an experience.
Yeah, that was cool. You got him in amazing shape. Ooh, I remember he was like a big deal then. And that gym was hilarious because I remember there'd be like a random cat would just like walk around, and then there'd be like the treadmills where, do you remember that guy brought up the owner brought up the flooring where the weight area was, and he put down cardboard with like with duct tape. And it was supposed to be temporary, but it like never got fixed.
I do remember feeling like I needed a shower every time I'd walked in the place.
Oh my gosh.
And the dust under the treadmills there were dust balls the size of mice. I thought they were mice.
It was so funny because we would take, like, my clients were paying me incredible money. We'd come from another gym down the road, and my clients were like high-end clients, and they were working in this place that was like a little bit ghetto, and they actually loved it. They were like, Rosa, this place is so cool. Like, I remember guys working out like in their jeans, and like it was just so funny.
Yeah, quite a
But they
place.
loved it. It was like a whole other world.
Yeah.
It was well equipped, though. That was important.
But that was a long time ago now. I mean, it's long
Yeah.
over a decade ago.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, I've
More
been
like,
back in Canada for about 10 years, so it was.
yeah.
Gosh, good times. Okay, let's get into it. I did bring Glenn on so that we could talk about and reminisce about the good old days. I brought him on because you are now like doing such incredible work around breath work. And this is something that's really become not only like a hot topic, but something that's really helping people in immense ways. And I started to see a lot of this online with different practitioners. So when I saw that you had moved on to focusing on breath work, I was super intrigued and excited because I was like, wow, like Glenn's really onto something. And I also know like how much you care about people and helping people just to be better versions of themselves, to feel really incredible. And so I was like, wow, this is cool. This is like another layer to who you are. But let's start off with like what is a breath coach and why has this become so important to you?
Well, it's one of those things that's actually quite difficult to describe. But when you say to somebody, I do breath work, they sort of look at you like, well, what do you mean? There's nothing wrong with my breathing. That's always the general reaction. What do you mean breath work? I've been breathing all my life,
Right.
which was my reaction when I first came across it. Now, I'd trained in yoga, I'd done the yogic breathing pranayama, but it was always contained within the session on the mat. And it's a little bit esoteric. It's fantastic. It's the origin of all of this pretty much. But applying it to daily life and putting that into your world, no one there isn't really it's not really that accessible in that way. And no one there wasn't much detail of like what's actually happening to you, why. That was part of it. But I came across breath work and wasn't too sure about it. A friend of mine had actually trained in Oxygen Advantage, but I was a little bit dismissive of it because I was the same, even though I'd done the yoga. But I looked further into it, and then I had a bad experience on a meditation retreat, and I had to leave early because I basically went into a sort of fight or flight response because it was so intense. And I realized when came away from it that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't exhale. So this made me look again at the breathing and particularly the Oxygen Advantage because I was aware that it was done from a scientific perspective by somebody who's worked with people with breathing trouble, with asthma, with anxiety, and then on to athletes and sports people. And I saw this as well, I can study this and I can learn the science of it because it's important, I think, for people now to, if you're going to do something, to know what's happening to you when you're doing it. Because anyone can say, do this exercise, and something happens, and then you come away from it, and well, what am I going to do with it now? And what actually happened to me then?
Right.
I needed to know what's going on, how this works, and also to give myself something that I could practice in real time that could fit into my day.
Mm.
And it's kind of away from left field. It's more applicable and real for day-to-day people, maybe who aren't interested in esoteric practices in yoga and anything like that. And a way of actually improving your health and various aspects of your health through just controlling your breathing.
Right.
So I did the training, I did a lot of research, I did the training, I took a lot of time over it. And what it comes to is a breath coach is someone who will teach you what I teach is how to breathe optimally based on the fact that most of us, not all of us, but most of us, including top athletes, have dysfunctional breathing patterns. Now, you might not be aware this is happening to you. If you've got a dysfunctional breathing pattern, then you it can lead to anxiety, to poor sleep, even to asthma, to panic attacks, to exercise-induced asthma attacks, bronchoconstriction, gassing out when you're training. You may think it's your fitness, but it may not be.
Wow.
And on top of that, you can optimally you can train in different little techniques. They're not complicated techniques, but if you introduce these techniques into your daily life, which is very easy to do, and you understand what's happening, you can alter how much oxygen your organs, your brain are getting. You can alter the blood flow to the brain, you can dilate your blood vessels, and more importantly, one of the main things is it's counterintuitive. A lot of it's not what you think. So if you learn these techniques, you train with someone like me, you learn these techniques, it has a monumental effect on your health because it's directly related to your nervous system. It's directly related to your brain. It's related to your digestion, your blood flow, your concentration. If you think about what's the first thing that happens to your breathing if you feel anxious? That's the simplest way to look at it. What
Right.
happens when you're breathing? So we look at functional breathing pattern training and also simulated high altitude training, which sounds very athletic and complicated, but it's not. It's not. They're actually about, and this is going to go into some of the little science of it.
Yeah, go for it.
It's looking at your CO2 tolerance. So oxygen advantage, which is what I'm trained in, you look at breathing from a biochemical point of view, a biomechanical point of view, and a psychophysiological point of view. So it's not just one thing. So biochemically, we look at what's going on with the gas exchange. How are you breathing and what's happening in your body? And how can you change or control that? How is it affecting your health? Then we look at the biochemical dimension, which is diaphragm breathing, nasal breathing, engaging the diaphragm, engaging the breathing muscles, breathing deeply, not gasping, breathing deeply down into your lungs. Look at cadence breathing, speed. And then we also look at the psychophysiological aspect. There's questionnaires for that, and it's to get an idea of what kind of life have you got. Is it a stressful life? Are you a sports person? Do you struggle sleeping? Do you have difficulty breathing? All of those sorts of things. So we look at functional breathing pattern training and simulated high altitude training. And we use several tests to establish your baseline. And based on that, the exercises are to develop what's called your BOLT score, which is your body oxygen level test. So this is simple breath holds to establish how long you hold your breath. And then what we do is we alter your tolerance to carbon dioxide, which is the primary driver to breathe. Now, if you have a low tolerance to carbon dioxide, then you may struggle with breathlessness. You may be breathing incorrectly. You may be upper chest breathing. You may be mouth breathing. You may not be recruiting the diaphragm. So we look at working on improving your BOLT score, and we do a maximum breathlessness test. It's walking on a breath hold. And then based on that, we work through, there's between 11 and 14 different exercises that you do in stages. So if you do the whole lot together, it's like a workout, but
Right.
with only a little bit of movement. You can just walk quickly, you can run on the spot, things like that. But I mean, I've scratched the surface there, but that's what it aims at, functional breathing, and also for anyone doing sports, is to optimize your endurance and recovery and
Right.
your oxygen efficiency.
That's so interesting. What I love is that when you touched on that experience that you had at your retreat and how you
Mhm.
had to leave early because it was not a great experience. I love that, like, maybe in that moment you could just feel so low from something like that. And yet that was like what was leading you to finding this. It was leading you to find this incredible new path. Like, I find that so profound. Um, when it comes to, you touched on anxiety and all the things, and a lot of our listeners are um experience, like a lot of women listen in and we're all in like that 40 plus range, which is the whole perimenopause phase of life.
Yeah.
And anxiety really starts to become a thing. And it's something that maybe someone didn't experience before and is experiencing now. And you did touch a little bit on that, but how can someone like self-select, someone that's listening, how are they like, what are some things they might be feeling? And then they might be like, oh my gosh, I never thought about that. Maybe it's either the breathing that's causing it or the breathing that can help me. Like, what are some things that
Yeah.
your clients are like, oh my goodness, I'm experiencing this and I really need a solution. And now I'm listening to Glenn and this could possibly help me.
Okay. If you're having trouble with anxiety or you burn out or overload, or, uh, it's almost 90+% that your breathing is off too. And
Right.
if your breathing is off, you're probably shallow breathing, breathing through the mouth, upper chest breathing. So you're
Mhm.
not ventilating properly. Your respiratory rate is high. You are breathing in excess of your metabolic requirements. You're blowing off too much CO2, which I'll get to later on.
Yeah.
If you're frequently sighing, frequently yawning, you
Oh,
notice
sign.
breathing, your heart's racing, you're struggling to sleep, your mind is racing, you can't concentrate on anything, you feel nervous, you might feel short of breath. These are all traits of dysfunctional breathing. I mean, there are some sort of underlying quiet ones as well. Like you may find exercise absolutely intolerable. You're just constantly out of breath. That might not be because you're physically unfit. That might be because of dysfunctional breathing.
Yeah,
Because
I
there are
found that interesting.
there are top athletes that have a low Bolt score and dysfunctional breathing patterns. And
Right.
of course, when that changes, if you take it at that sort of elite level, if you change it, the results of there's tons and tons of science behind this, tons of research and tests and everything. I think there's about 600 to 800 of them behind all this. If they change it at that level, their performance dramatically improves, and that might be just 2-3%. But as far as with anxiety, your breathing is the first thing to go. If your breathing's off, if you're hyperventilating, you might not be doing it noticeably to yourself.
Right.
You might have a low level of it, and that's anxiety. You're overbreathing, and that is sending your nervous system into a parasympathetic state of
Right.
fight or flight. And a lot of people are in that constantly and don't know how to get out of it.
Right.
Other than I'll do some exercise, I'll do some yoga. But then, of course, if your breathing is dysfunctional, it will translate into that as well. And you'll
Right.
generate more stress to your system. So what we do with the functional breathing exercises, the first part of it is realign your nervous system, push you. Sorry, I got that. I always said that the wrong way around.
Mhm.
Sympathetic nervous system response is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and digest. It's very easy to say those the
Right.
wrong way around. So you go into a sympathetic drive, which is fight or flight, and that includes hyperventilation, stress, anxiety, all the rest of it, decreased blood flow to the brain, vasoconstriction, all of those things. Functional breathing training does the opposite, and this will push you into a parasympathetic. So just important that that is clear because
Right.
they often get said the wrong way around. So this is to do with rest and digest, slowing your heart rate down, stimulating the vagus nerve, dilating your blood vessels, and increasing blood flow to the brain, and also activating your spleen with the breath holds to release red blood cells, and that will bring your state down. And if you slow your breathing down, even if you just do something very simple, you slow your breathing down to 6 breaths a minute. Your exhale is longer than your inhale. That will tell your brain you are in a state of safety. So you can
Right.
actually tell your brain, you can trick your brain, even if you're feeling panic, you can trick your brain into thinking you're safe. So this is why it's the foundation of everything, because there are many other therapies that are fantastic, but if you address your breathing first and you've got techniques you know how to do, go-to techniques. So if this is happening, I can do this particular exercise. And throughout the day, you're bringing your attention to your breath. How am I breathing? Am I holding my breath? Am I breathing too quickly? Am I mouth breathing? There are there are so many things that you can do that are detrimental. But these exercises, this functional breathing training address all of those things, and you can get quite dramatic results. You improve your BOLT score, your body oxygen level test through the exercises. That will naturally make your regular breathing slower with a natural pause after your exhale, which will in turn balance your nervous system. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, that absolutely does. And as you're speaking about that, what came to my mind is when you speak about nervous system, I always associate nervous system also with, and you touched on it, with digestion. And so now
Mm.
I'm thinking, is that one of the physical effects if you're not, apart from, like we talked about, the anxiety and that and the shallow breathing, but what are some other physical things that maybe we think like, oh, my digestion is off, and I assume it's something I'm eating, I assume it's, something I've done, and yet maybe is it possible that it's actually my dysfunctional breathing?
It's connected. It's very easy with any particular sort of kind of therapy or way of working to think that's all of it. If you're a nutritionist, it's easy to think it's just about diet. If you're a trainer, it's just exercise. If you're a yoga teacher, it's about that. But nothing is simple. Everything is connected.
Connected.
It could be the missing link if you've
Right.
tried other things. So if your breathing is dysfunctional and you're in a constant state of fight or flight, in a sympathetic drive, that is the word, not parasympathetic, a sympathetic drive, you're in fight or flight, your digestion shuts down. It's the first thing.
Yeah.
You ever get into, if you find yourself, I won't go into detail, but if you need to go to the loo, but you suddenly get into an argument, your digestion shuts down straight away. You
Oh,
don't
yeah, I
go.
never thought of that. Yes.
Yeah. Notice it if it happens again. If you get irate about anything, you'll suddenly realize, oh, I really don't need the loo now. When you rest and digest,
Lou for my Canadian friends, washroom.
yeah, you stimulate the digestive response. So if you do one of the oxygen advantage exercises is breathing light, there's a lot of focus on breathing very light. And you let the CO2 build in your blood and your lungs, it will stimulate the digestion response. And you often know it because your mouth starts watering
Right.
during exercise and you feel
Wow.
drowsy. So
Incredible.
yes, it absolutely is connected to your digestion.
Yeah.
And also your state of mind. Your state of mind, if it's frantic, you bring the attention to the breathing, you slow it down, your
Right.
state of mind alters.
You touched on maybe you're a mouth breather, but
Yeah.
I mean, breathing through your mouth is something we all do. So what do you mean? Like, what is so wrong about mouth breathing as opposed to, I assume, as opposed to nose breathing?
Okay, well, first of all, it's a great insult, isn't it?
Like,
Mouth breather. Why is it an insult? Why is it an
it feels
insult?
like an insult, but like, what? It's giving
Yes.
me a lot.
Okay. Well, in reality, the nose has 30 plus different functions. The mouth has two, talking and eating. The mouth is an emergency, and it sounds a bit crude, but the mouth is an emergency hole. The mouth is for emergency breathing. If for some reason your nose was you were completely blocked, or you couldn't
Yeah.
breathe through your nose,
Oh,
or
okay.
at the end extreme of exhaustion, physical activity, like an elite athlete, you need to blow off some CO2, right? But there are many reasons that you need to breathe through your nose. First of all, breathing through the mouth does nothing for you. You open your mouth, you breathe in all the bacteria, you constrict the airways, you breathe in cold air that is unfiltered and uncleaned.
Right.
This is actually, there's a lot of work gone into this. It's bad for your dental health. It impairs cognitive ability, and it actually can alter the shape of your face. If you
Whoa.
if someone's been mouth breathing most of their life, you can see it straight away because chances are you'll have a receding chin. Because if your mouth is open and if you're mouth breathing during sleep,
Right.
it will alter the shape of your jaw. The natural resting place of your tongue is on the roof of your mouth. Jaw should be closed. It can
Right.
actually alter the entire shape of your head. And in children now, there's a lot of studies being done. It's associated with cognitive function, mouth breathing with children
Oh my
and
goodness.
adults too. So you've got that aspect of it, and also dental health because you're breathing in a lot of bacteria. So
So how do
the
you
mouth,
have dental health? Like what do you mean by that?
well, because your mouth, if your mouth is open the whole time,
Yeah.
you're breathing in any pathogen in the air, anything that's there. And over the years, not only can you get a lot of infection, it can alter the shape of your jaw because your jaw isn't resting in its natural position.
Right.
So that's one aspect of, mouth breathing is bad. The other aspect is you're blowing off a lot of CO2. And I'll get to that now with nose breathing because you
Oh,
breathe through your nose, you clean, filter, and heat the air as it goes in. Okay. You also produce nasal nitric oxide, which was only discovered about 33 years ago, that it's produced in the human nasal cavities, paranasal sinuses. Nasal nitric oxide is like a cleaning thing, and it helps filter and distribute blood in the lungs. And it's also associated, unfortunately, testing on mice, but that it improves cognitive function. So that's one thing, nasal nitric oxide. Then the next part of it is that you've got 50% more resistance when you breathe through your nose than your mouth, which
mm,
forces your diaphragm to recruit. Now, if you're mouth breathing, you're shallow breathing, you're breathing in the upper chest, you're losing, your chances are you've got a faster respiratory rate, you're losing the power that your nose has to draw air into the lower part of your lungs. So your
wow.
lungs are not filling properly. Hence, you can be hyperventilating without actually realizing you're doing it. And most people exercise with their mouths open because it's easier. It's much easier. It's hard to breathe through your nose when you're exercising. But you're breathing through your nose. So you're cleaning, filtering the air, producing nasal nitric oxide, recruiting the diaphragm. It forces you to recruit the diaphragm way more. And it's harder. But one of the very important things is you hold on to carbon dioxide. Now, the carbon dioxide builds in the blood if you're moving or you hold your breath. All of our breath holds are done on an exhale
Mm,
without hyperventilation. If you exhale normally, pinch and hold your nose, you wait, you feel the urge to breathe, your diaphragm contracts. That urge to breathe, that desire to breathe is your tolerance to carbon dioxide. It is not lack of oxygen.
wow.
You,
Interesting.
you, you hear stories, many stories, people drown, people freeze,
Yeah.
they're dead for minutes, but the oxygen to the brain, they haven't gone hypoxic. It takes a while for that to happen, especially if someone's very cold. So you've got 99%, basically around 99% pressure of oxygen in your blood. The urge to breathe is not lack of oxygen, it's CO2 tolerance.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting.
And CO2 it's always thought of as an evil, bad thing, get rid of
It
it.
is.
But if you're holding on to it, if you breathe through your nose, you hold on to it. Breathing's more difficult. It's difficult, gets harder. Your tolerance to it with the breath holds and breathing through your nose will increase. What happens is something called the Bohr effect, which he was a scientist, I think his name was Christian Bohr, discovered this within the last 100 years. In the presence of CO2, hemoglobin releases its hold on oxygen. Its association with oxygen is it basically think of it as gripping the oxygen. It loosens its grip on the oxygen. So when you're feeling air hunger, you're actually getting better blood flow to the brain and you're vasodilating and
Wow.
more oxygen is available. Okay. when you overbreathe and you blow off the CO2,
Yeah.
that you can do it, you can keep going, but you're blowing it off. And then what happens is the hemoglobin holds on to the oxygen. So you start feeling lightheaded.
Right.
Blood flow to the brain is decreased. If you've ever done any breath work where you hyperventilate, blood flow to the brain gets really poor. So you feel really dizzy and high. And they do it in all sorts of, there are some really strange breathing things going on where they'll get people hyperventilating and they'll say, "Oh, it was amazing. This thing happened, and you starved your brain of oxygen, is what happened." I'm not saying other things didn't happen, but you starve your brain of oxygen if you overbreathe. So when
Right.
your mouth breathing, you can gas out very quickly. People get bronchoconstriction. It also constricts the air. It blocks your nose, mouth breathing. You can't
Yeah.
breathe as efficiently through your nose. So you breathe through the nose, you hold onto the CO2. It actually facilitates. It's a lactic acid buffer as well. And not
Oh,
only that, you increase your tolerance to it. You get better blood flow to the brain, and then that in turn will help your breathing become more functional. You'll take slower, more natural, longer breaths. And you can train yourself to breathe through your nose exercising. It's hard. It is really
right.
hard. But if you can't do it, then you're basically your body's way ahead of your lungs. And there's that terribly important muscle in there, the diaphragm,
Yeah.
which doesn't get a workout because you're mouth breathing. If you learn to exercise using your diaphragm, it creates more core stability because that is an important core muscle.
Right.
And you can't exercise it through sit-ups, through doing planks, through doing back raises, through doing oblique exercises,
Right.
through yoga. You can't exercise your diaphragm, but you can if you're using it when you're breathing.
Right.
So yeah, that's what I think I've gone. Did I go off topic a bit there? But
No, no, we're talking about the mouth breathing. I'm
yeah,
finding this so fascinating, and I really appreciate like how well you describe it so that we understand why it's working and why it's important. And like when I think about that, like when you were talking about all these like breathing techniques and people are like hyperventilating, I always hated that feeling, and that's what I associated breathing techniques with, because I think that's
yeah.
maybe what something of the past, and I never liked that. Like I didn't like that feeling of
You've touched on something really interesting there, because the what I'm doing here with Oxygen Advantage, it's kind of more of the yin side, and the
yeah,
yang is all the dramatic stuff. This is very subtle. The breath holds aren't subtle. They can be really quite tough.
this doesn't sound
But you
scary
don't,
to me.
yeah, but you do what you can. You don't have to push too hard. But
Right.
hyperventilation exercises, you can do them. You need to nasal breathe when you're doing them, really. But excuse me, if you hyperventilate, I mean, there's particular hyperventilation exercises where, and then you exhale and you can hold your breath and you think, wow, I can hold my breath for a minute, for 2 minutes. Wow, I've got really strong lungs. That's not why. What happens when you hyperventilate? You blow off all the CO2, you blow it all off. So when you hold your breath, the drive to breathe has practically vanished. And it takes quite a while for that CO2 to rise. Meantime, your oxygen's going down because you're not breathing. And then the blood flow to the brain is reduced. You start feeling really lightheaded. And if your SpO2 gets below about 60%, you'll pass out. I've done
Right.
it myself. I did it a few years ago. Pass out, bang your head, and then wake up and think, what happened? Um, it can be really dangerous, especially if you're doing it near water.
Yeah.
Navy SEALs have died doing that. People have died. They've done hyperventilation, then they've gone in cold water. The
Wow.
drive to breathe doesn't happen. They pass out underwater, and then when they do breathe in, they're underwater.
Wow.
So hyperventilation has its place, but if you have issues with anxiety or nerves or poor sleep, hyperventilation exercises might be the last thing you should be doing
Yeah.
because that could push you into a panic attack.
Yeah, makes sense. And probably
So
why I
none,
like that feeling.
yeah, not and of course it's you see a lot of it's all big and dramatic. I mean, I see some stuff, people, having spasms on the floor, and that happens if you
Yeah,
hyperventilate and
right.
you starve your brain of oxygen. You all sorts of bizarre things happen.
Amazing.
The
Um,
question is that what you should be doing? Is that good for you?
right. Yeah, okay. I love that we touched on that because I think it's important because we all kind of have our ideas of what this might be, right? So
Yeah,
I love that this is just feels a lot more rooted in health and vitality and helping you to be more um grounded and not just
absolutely.
grounded but also like you said efficient in our daily lives and the activities that we're doing. You
Yeah.
touched on the facial structure of mouth breathing. And actually, that was something that I had seen online, and that led me to mouth taping at night because I know for a fact I was a mouth breather. I was ran 3 marathons. I ran all of them breathing through my mouth for sure. I've only said that I have a really bad sense of smell, and I think that's because I don't actually breathe through my nose. And so
Mm.
I started mouth taping, and a few months ago now, it's been a while, and I was shocked at how much I love it. I
Yeah.
was waking, like, I wake up, I say I was waking up more rested. I wake up more rested. I actually just went on vacation for a week and forgot to take the tape. And I know that I was mouth breathing again. Like I can feel it in the morning. It's
Yeah.
bizarre because you think after a few months that I would be trained to do it, but nope, I still need to keep using that tape.
No, it depends how I can say quite categorically I was a mouth breather at night all my life, and I'm in my 50s now, and it's kind of catastrophic. And I've got a slightly receding chin, and I had terrible dental issues.
Interesting.
I've had to have my teeth all, and you see they're fine now, but I had to have them completely restructured because they
Wow.
got crowded, all sorts of problems, and I'm not saying that's the sole reason, but mouth breathing at night, most people say, "Oh, I don't mouth breathe at night," but you wouldn't know if you were waking up with a dry mouth, if you snore.
For
I mean,
dry mouth. Wow.
yeah, dry mouth, drooling on the pillow, having an awful
Yeah.
night's sleep, needing to go to the loo all the time. Those are symptoms of mouth
Oh,
breathing at night.
interesting that that's associated.
Yeah. Now, there are different kinds of ways of dealing with that. The Oxygen Advantage has something called myotape, which is it's a sort of elastic with sticky on one side. It's like this tape. When I did that, loads of hearts appeared.
We're
I made an accidental
recording
heart
on
shape.
for our listeners, we're recording on Zoom and Glenn just like lifted his hands to show like what the tape would look like and then it showed all these really sweet love hearts.
All the love came out, you know. But so it's a sort of loop shaped elastic tape. Peel off on one side, you pull it over your mouth and stick it. And what that does is it holds your mouth just gently closed, but you can still talk, and you can do what's called mouth puffing at night if that happens.
Oh,
So a lot of people have sleep issues with sleep apneas. There are various kinds of sleep apneas. If you've got a sleep apnea issue, it can be helpful because if you hold your breath and suddenly
okay.
you can still do that.
Yeah.
So that Patrick McCown, who designed Oxygen Advantage, he's created this stuff, and it's very, very good. Personally, I use micro pore tape, the stuff you use to stick on bandages,
Okay.
bandages together,
Yeah.
and I just put it across. Now,
Yeah.
the what happened to me is in the evenings, it took me months to get used to it because I had rhinitis, which is just nasal, always had nasal constriction in my life. Had hay fever and asthma when I was a kid. My nose never feels clear. For the
Right.
last 6 months now, it's crystal clear. No issues at all. I can breathe through my nose all night. When I first tried it, I couldn't.
Yeah.
But you do exercises before bed. You do what's called a breathe light exercise before you go to bed, 10, 15 minutes. And you tape the mouth, your tongue naturally rests. And when you go to sleep and you become really relaxed, your jaw doesn't drop.
Right.
You can actually You can get breathe easy strips as well. These little strips you stick across the top of your nose, looks like a band-aid.
Yeah,
Opens your nose.
right.
So I started using those, but it's ridiculous the amount of apparatus on you at night when you go to bed. But
Your
she's,
partner must love
yeah,
it.
yes,
So
she's got
attractive.
used to it. But what she did say, my wife, she did say, no more snoring. I've
Yeah,
stopped snoring.
wow,
Completely stopped.
really?
I don't keep her awake with snoring.
Isn't that
Um,
amazing?
and I don't sleep too long anyway. But what has happened is that when I wake up, you can tell you've been in a deep sleep.
Right.
You're you go into a far. I don't remember all of the details of this, but you go into a deeper sleep. When you're nasal breathing, you
Yeah.
go into a deeper sleep. You're not mouth breathing, and there's
I
also all
definitely
the
feel
back.
better rested.
What's that?
I feel better rested for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people are doing it during exercise as well. So, because it's a sort of, you've got your mouth taped, you can feel the physical reminder not to do it, not to breathe through your mouth. I mean, we're not saying that you should never breathe through your mouth during exercise, but if you're a recreational athlete, there's no need to breathe through your mouth. If you're an elite athlete, yeah, you're going to have to do it at some point, in a race or anything like that. But when they've trained athletes with nasal breathing, and the results are phenomenal.
Right.
But you can unblock your nose with breath holds. You can clear your nose in 5 minutes. You can, once you continue to nose breathe, you will eventually dilate your airways, and
Mm,
it will become easier to do. It might be tough at first, but you ease into it. You do what you can. But also with exercise, if you nasal breathe, if you switch to nasal breathing, you might have to dial it down a bit first, but you'll find that you recover better.
right.
Your recovery will be way better. You won't gas out. You won't have a sore throat. You won't lose too much CO2.
Right. Okay, this is so fascinating. Um, when I was on your is it on maybe on your Instagram or maybe you sent me a loom because you love looming.
Yeah. I'm a loomer.
Looming is a video recording thing for our listeners. I love it. And Glenn's been sending me some information, which has been so cool. And one of the things that came up was how breathing could impact our emotions. And I was like, whoa, tell me about that. Because that is not something I ever really thought of or considered.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, going back to some of the stuff I touched on earlier, if you think about what happens when you get upset to your breathing? What happens when you feel anxious? What happens if you feel upset? What happens to your breathing?
Right.
The first thing that happens is it becomes shallow, it becomes lighter, it becomes erratic.
Yeah.
It very often goes to the mouth. And that, of course, it has a feedback loop to your brain telling you that you're unsafe, you're in
Mm,
danger, you're not, the blood flow to the brain is reduced. So if you're struggling with emotional issues, I'm not saying this is a cure for anything, it isn't, but it is an incredible foundation to start with. It's kind of the first thing you should do. Number one thing before you do anything, look at your breathing. Just start with that. Learn some techniques, start with that, then go to all the other stuff. Yeah, you're now I'm going to get into an area which I can't remember every detail in, but your diaphragm, someone might correct me on this. Your diaphragm's connected to your brain via the phrenic nerve.
okay.
Phrenic, think about it.
Ah, yeah.
Schizophrenic. The word, that comes from somewhere, that it is
Right.
related to your state, to your emotional state, to your mental state. So if you're nervous, you're scared, you're emotional, your breathing will be off. Your diaphragm won't be working properly. Your breathing will be erratic. And that will in turn affect your concentration. It will affect your clarity. It will affect your focus. So, for example, if um, you've got to do a huge public speaking thing, or you've got to go out on stage, or there's a really nervous thing happening. I had to do a speech at a funeral a few years back, and I hadn't done any of this practice, and I found it incredibly difficult, having not done anything like that for a long time. But had I known what to do that I know now, I would have reduced my breathing rate. So it was very, very light to let the CO2 build up, and then gone into several kind of quite tough breath holds, 3 or 4 breath holds, which dilates everything, gives you a massive blood flow, blood boost to the brain, activates your spleen, and it creates absolute clarity.
Mm,
You're 100% in the moment. Because
incredible.
one thing that this is mentioned in ancient yoga and a long way back. When you hold your breath, you cannot think.
Yeah.
Can't you can't think. That's one aspect of it. So in itself, some of the breath holds are like a meditation. But once you slow down your breathing, again, you're telling your nervous system, you're telling your brain that you are safe. Once you let that CO2 build up, you create a better flow of oxygen to the brain.
Right.
You become clearer, you become calmer, and you slow your breathing down. You slow down that exhale. You can feel it. If you breathe in 4 seconds and out for 6, you can feel your heart rate slow down. It will slow down. Now there are other factors, your respiratory rate, because I mean, you could go to a yoga class and someone might say, right, okay, in for 4, out for 6, which
Yeah.
is a good respiratory rate. But one person might have hyperventilation syndrome. Another person might have dysfunctional breathing. Another person might have really good breath control. So one person might be going,
Right. Wow.
that person will end up hyperventilating. Another person who's controlling it, their respiratory rate, they will alter what's called the tidal volume, which will in turn affect their minute volume. So once you've got control of that, you can end up with a liter more air in your lungs every minute.
Right.
Now that might sound a bit complex, but your respiratory rate, the speed of your breathing, the cadence of your breathing, you need to also bear in mind the biochemical side, what's happening with the CO2. How is your CO2 tolerance? What is your BOLT score? What's your maximum breathlessness test? Because they relate directly to that biochemical part. The biomechanical part, the movement, the cadence. So this is why we look at all of these things. We don't just look at one.
Right.
You need to understand how it's all working, and then apply the exercises. And your BOLT score will increase every week if you do it. And if it gets to around 25 seconds and above, then you're out of the woods, so
Right.
to speak. You're looking as an athlete to get it up to 40 seconds. But if you've got asthma or dysfunctional breathing, it could be as little as 3 or 4 seconds.
Okay, I love this. What I really took from that is that we all have like a different starting point. We all have,
Yeah.
so like you said, you have the yoga instructor that says do this, and yet even though we all think we're doing exactly what the yoga instructor said, we're all having a very different response to it because of depending where the dysfunction is, depending like how efficient we are, all the things. And so really, I really believe in investing in our health. It's my number one thing. And I always say if we don't invest in our health, we'll invest in our illness and trying to get better when we get there. And
Yeah.
I don't know, well, I do know about the UK very well. I know that the healthcare system is just about as good as the healthcare system in Canada. And for those of you that can't hear my sarcasm, it's actually very frightening times at the moment in
You
terms
don't you don't want to get ill in the UK at the moment.
of,
I mean, if you emergency appointments take a month.
yeah, it's the same. It's actually a crisis here in Canada as well, Glenn. It's really frightening, and people really have to advocate for themselves and be on top of it. And so that's why I'm like the more you invest into your health, the better. And so I love that you're on because you offer such an incredible service to people. So if someone that's listening and is thinking, this is totally me. I feel like this can really help me. I love that you said you can literally do this from anywhere. You work online. What does that entail? Like, what does a typical session look like? And what would someone be looking at? Like, is it something, I'm sure it's very individual, but do you have people that come to you for maybe like 3 sessions and they're good, or are they like, do a block? Like how does that work?
Okay. Generally, you're looking at 4 or 5 sessions.
Okay.
So for some people, I work with a couple of people that they like to do it ongoing
Yeah.
because they're not good at doing things on their own and they forget
Ability.
and they sort of, oh, sorry, what was that again? No, I haven't done it this week. And so we'll keep touching base.
Yeah.
But to get you going, you'd be looking at 4 or 5 sessions, and you don't have to be you don't have to be fit. Fitness is related to this, but
Mm.
it's not necessarily it's not something that's important whether you're fit or not. Because some fit people have terrible dysfunctional breathing patterns. Some unfit people are not too bad, believe it or not.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
So what it would entail is we do these one-to-one sessions. They're usually around an hour or so, and you can do it one-to-one or in group.
Okay.
And you don't need to be anywhere in particular. But we would work through, I'd explain a lot of the things I've gone into now, and then we start with the various exercises. There are a set of 11 different exercises. And in the first session, we do the first two just to introduce it to you because it's a lot to take in. And then you go away and work on those and start integrating them into your life. Then we come back again a week later and then we start moving further. We do the first 6 exercises. So we'd go from doing the little breath holds to the light breathing I spoke to you about. Then we go into the cadence breathing, the diaphragm. Then we go into doing some breath holds. So you'd be walking, little breath holds, building up. And then depending on where you are and how you cope with it, your age, how you've answered the questionnaire that I give you, how I see that you are, how things go for you. Then we move into the preparation for simulated altitude training, which again sounds like something huge and heavy and
It
dangerous.
does.
It's not. You basically do breath holds. You do relatively maximal breath holds. So you'll move on the breath hold, you'll move and move, and you'll get to feel the sensation of building up the CO2 in your blood, and then resume breathing through the nose. It's quite a sensation. It's quite intense, but you don't necessarily have to do that.
Mm.
It's not the only part of it. That is part of the whole thing. But we'll start with the easier stuff, introducing how to breathe correctly, things you can do at home, things you can do when you're out and about. You do this when you go for a walk, you do it in the shower, you do it before bed, you do it when you're driving the car. Obviously not big breath holds. I mean little controlled things.
Yes.
Don't try that at home. And we'd work through this series of exercises. So every time we meet, we touch base, see where you are, see what your bolt score is, because we take your bolt score and your maximum breathlessness test. We work through the exercises, and then the next time we do a few more, and then we go back over them again, and then I'll teach you some other different exercises. For example, how to deal with a panic attack, how to centralize your nervous system. You've heard of box breathing, right? Most people have heard of that. The military use it, sort of pre-op type thing, and that's you balance your nervous system and you make yourself alert and calm at the same time. And that's by breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds,
Yeah.
breathing out for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds. You bring the left and the right together, makes you very focused and quite still. So things like that, things like you have a panic attack. Remember the old thing of breathing into a paper bag?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Into your hands. I'm covering my mouth here. You breathe into your hands. And if you breathe in for 3, out for 3, just controlled, this is if you're having a panic, you pull CO2 in your hands. You experience air hunger. That's a huge thing we look at. We're experiencing air hunger, a little bit of it. You pull the CO2, the hemoglobin loosens on the oxygen, blood flow to the brain is increased, your nervous system
Oh,
settles.
yeah.
There's various things, but you're looking,
Right.
5 sessions or so, or
That's
in
amazing.
group. And some
Yeah.
people keep coming back because they want me to guide them to do it. There is also, I think I've told you this, but there's also a fantastic app the Oxygen Advantage app.
Okay, cool.
And you this has a lot of details on it. It has a lot of breathing exercises on it. I've got hold on a minute. Let me remove that. Yep. Okay, so you can see that there.
Yeah, I can see it. So for our listeners, we'll I could put that
Yeah,
into the show notes. But
it's an
there's an
amazing
app.
supplement. Yeah,
Yeah, very
Oxygen Advantage. It's an amazing supplement. It has all of the exercises on it. It doesn't do quite what I do, but it's a great thing to have. You can
great.
measure your bolt score on it, and it will give you exercises based on your bolt score,
Brilliant.
and it will guide you visually when you're doing your
Great.
breathing exercises.
Cool. Well, I think it's important to talk about this because a lot of times listeners haven't worked with someone online. So it's just so nice to know that this is accessible and that you can do it from wherever in the world that you are. You don't have to be anywhere near where Glenn is. So what is I've got two more things. There's always a question I ask everyone that I'm going to ask you pretty quickly here. But before we get on to that, how can someone find you? Like, how can they reach out to you if they're like, I at least want to have a conversation and see if this is something that will benefit me? We
Oh,
know it'll
absolutely. Just send me a message on Instagram.
on
I'm
Instagram.
on Instagram. I'm the breath scientist. Now, I'm not a scientist, but
That's a good name.
I'm someone who studies the science of. I'm a student in the
Brilliant.
science
I'll put
of the
it in
breath.
the show notes, but it's basically the underscore breath underscore scientist
Yeah,
for
and there's a little blue, red, white, and orange symbol on it, and you can
fantastic.
just send me a direct message. It's that simple. I mean, people usually
Great.
do. Someone will say, what do I do?" And it is not. You do not have to be at any level of fitness or health for this. Wherever you are, we take wherever you are
Brilliant.
and build from there. So you're not going to be plunged into something that's going to be horrible or there's too much.
I love it.
You know, some people want more of a challenge. Some people are very sporty. They want to improve, and other people are just kind of, I need some help. I'm struggling with my
I think
breathing.
a couple things that spoke to me in our conversation that would move me into action were one, the structure of your face. I think that's huge. Like, I know that's what led me to start mouth taping at night. The next thing was the dental and oral health was something that I never knew. Like that, I find that's incredible. The anxiety, the being in your head all the time, the not sleeping well, like all of those things would definitely put me into action. So I so
Yeah.
appreciate how you shared the science of things too, because it is important. I'm not like a sciencey person, like, but I like to hear it at least once. I like to know that there is a reason why this works or why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling or why things are happening. So I really appreciate that you were able to explain that to us. Um,
You may well have you may well be taking medication for something that you can actually address without medication. I mean, the
Interesting.
root of Oxygen Advantage is in the Buteyko method, which
Brilliant.
was designed by a Russian fella, Dr. Buteyko, and that was all about dealing with asthma, anxiety, panic disorder, sleep disorder.
Right.
So it doesn't go into the sort of breath holds, the high altitude stuff. It looks at that. It just looks at those things. The simulated high altitude training. If you think about it, what do athletes do when they want to succeed at sea level? They go into altitude, but you can do that without going into altitude.
Right.
You can simulate being at 5,000 meters in
Yeah.
a 5-minute exercise. Um,
Incredible.
and
Amazing.
yeah, sorry, go on.
Cool. No, our last question, because we could
Yeah,
probably talk about this for another hour.
yeah,
It would be
yeah,
very easy. It's like back in the days where we used to like talk about training forever and all the different methods and all the
yeah.
things. And actually, when you were talking about how some people stay with you, it was the same in training clients, right? Like sometimes I would say to them, okay, you know everything you need to know. But it's the accountability piece and feeling like someone is on your side and someone is part of your health team, which I think is so profound to have like this. When people get really sick, they end up with a team of doctors to try and help them get better. But I've always really believed in a health team to help you to elevate various areas of your health and wellness. So I think that having a breath coach would be so profound. Okay, this is the question I ask everyone because I really love these moments in time that change things for us. So, what is something that you've heard, maybe read, experienced that changed everything for you? I know at this age we probably have many of those moments, but can you think of one that you'd like to share?
Oh, there are so many of them. Books I've read. I've completely changed my lifestyle over the years. Done things I never thought I would do. Um, there wasn't one moment. I don't I don't have a moment. It's a constant evolution.
Yeah.
It's a constant evolution. I mean, going to India and training as a yoga teacher was quite a profound experience. Being in an entirely different culture and doing things I'd never done before, living on a diet I'd never lived on before, and in a place that is the opposite of here.
Right.
Um, but
Love
yeah,
that.
everything with me has evolved. Because this is one thing I will mention is that, and I think it's more of a male issue. When men hit their 40s and 50s, they start to realize they don't really know much about anything. So they decide they know everything about everything and become rigid physically and mentally and not open to things they never thought of before. My experience is that women are mostly not like that. So it's yeah, I get much more response and much more taking this on board with women. I'm not saying this is how it is. This is my experience. Um, and I felt that I didn't ever want to be like that. I wanted to be open to something new. And I've suffered from it. When I first heard of these things,
Yeah.
I thought, oh hell, here we go. What's this now? Breathing? Are you kidding me? Um, how little I knew. I had no idea how profound this is. So I thought, okay, let's have a look at this, take it on board, and you've got to stay open. You
Yeah.
know, and this is a message to all guys out there when you get to middle age. We don't know anything. You realize you know nothing. You know something about something, but you
Yeah.
don't know how it is. You don't have the answers. But if you can help people and in that, stay open. Stay open. You don't know.
I
Try
love
it.
that. What a great way to end this. That's one thing I love about you is you've always been open to learning new things. And I think that's why we connected so well in the UK as well. You were always like looking at the next training evolution, the next thing. And you're always been so good at just going for it. And, you're the first breath coach we've had on this podcast. So I love that
Um,
because you're bringing something new to the listeners, something that maybe someone hadn't thought about before. And so this could be their moment where they hear something that really will change things for them. So if anyone feels really um, you're feeling like excited about this and that this may be the missing piece, please reach out to Glenn. He's super nice. You can just have a conversation. Just reach out, say hello, and I know he'll answer you
yeah,
back.
you know, it's that simple. We just have an informal chat, see where you are, what it is you want, what it is you need. And you know, you're not, I don't tie anyone into anything.
Yeah,
It doesn't work that way. It's a case of, right, okay, let's work together, see what you can get out of this. And no one is immune to the benefits of this.
amazing.
Nobody.
Thanks, Glenn. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your knowledge and your passion on this.
Thanks, Rosa.
Thanks. Bye. Thank you so much for listening in today. I know time is precious and I'm grateful you shared yours with me. It would mean the world to me if you felt an impact, a moment of inspiration, or learned something new. If you would share it with those you care about and leave me a review on iTunes. I'd love to know what spoke to you or what you'd like to hear more of. Your sharing and leaving a review would help so much on this journey to making an impact on as many people as possible. It's worth it. I know from experience, there are moments when something we hear has the possibility of changing everything.